Hello, hello. Thank you so much for tuning into this soft-spoken ASMR video. Today I'm going to be doing a survival case just to give a little bit of a lighter case. I guess it's still pretty intense, but a little bit lighter, I guess. I'm sorry for my break again. I actually recorded an entire 30-minute video, and then I realized that half of it for some reason was echoed. There's a little knob on my mic that's echoing that I didn't even know existed, and I must have hit it. So half of it was echoing, and I realized I couldn't upload it. I was tempted, but I know I shouldn't, so I'm going to try to maybe redo that one or just record the second half. But I had a trip coming up, so I didn't have time to redo it, so I apologize. But I have some good survival cases, disappearance cases, and just other general true crime cases that I'm writing the stories for, so I look forward to that. I'm excited. But today we're going to be talking about the survival case of Ada Blackjack. Ada Johnson was born May 10th, 1898 in the remote settlement of Spruce Creek in Alaska. Ada's father died of food poisoning when she was only 8 years old. Her mother sent her and her sister Rita to a Methodist mission school in Nome, Alaska. While she was indigenous, she was not raised with any knowledge of hunting or wilderness survival. She was instead brought up by Methodist missionaries who taught her enough English to study the Bible, who instructed her in housekeeping, sewing, and cooking white people food. So they were pretty much colonizers. At age 16, she married Jack Blackjack, a former hunter and dog sled driver. They moved to the Seward Peninsula in 1921 and had 3 children, but only their son Bennett survived infancy. Jack began abusing Ada and then finally deserted her and their son. Ada obtained a divorce before he could return, and she decided to walk 40 miles to Nome, where her mother was living. As they walked the long route, Ada carried Bennett when he was too tired to walk. Bennett suffered from tuberculosis and general poor health. When she arrived, she had no money or resources to provide. Ada cleaned houses and sewed clothes for miners to survive, but was unable to afford Bennett's tuberculosis treatment. Due to this, she temporarily had to place Bennett in the Jessie Lee Home for Children, which could care better for his tuberculosis. She vowed that she would find a way to make enough money to bring him back home. Nome Police Chief E.R. Jordan was familiar with Ada's situation, so he mentioned to her that there were some men who recruited indigenous people to go with them on their Arctic expeditions to Raglar Island. While Jordan was not familiar with the purpose of the expedition, he believed that Ada, who spoke English and was an excellent sewer, might be a good fit for the mission, which needed someone to sew fur clothing for the team. So the expedition was led by Canadian explorer Alan Crawford, but it was financed, planned, encouraged by Wilhelmar Stephenson. Stephenson assembled a team of 4 young men Alan Crawford, who was 20, Lorne Knight, who's 28, Fred Moore, who's 28, and Milton Galley, who was 19, to claim Wrangel Island for the British Empire, even though the British never really showed any slight interest in this. So, though he picked the team and funded this mission, Stephenson had never any intention of actually joining the party, and instead he was going to send this inexperienced team north with only 6 months of supplies and a hollow assurance that the friendly Arctic, quote-unquote, would provide ample game to augment their stores until a ship picked them up the following year. Ada had many misgivings about shipping out with the expedition of 4 men, especially because she had initially been promised she would be just one of many indigenous Alaskans in the party. But the odd jobs of sewing and housekeeping she was picking up in Nome was never going to be enough to bring Bennett home, and the Wrangel Island expedition promised a salary of $50 a month, and that amount was unheard of for Ada. So even so, they were going to pursue this expedition, and as they did, the rest of the hired indigenous Alaskans backed out. And on September 9th, 1921, she boarded the Silver Wave. 1 week later, they arrived on the Wrangel Island. At first, the weather was surprisingly mild, and the team soon settled into a rhythm. After a couple of weeks, the situation took a turn. Ada was painfully homesick and frightened and had become withdrawn. Every sight of the men's knives terrified her. She knew none of the men particularly wanted her there, and that they all regretted taking her, and she was convinced that night was going to kill her. She walked into the snow one day with a bottle of liniment that she planned to drink to kill herself. On another occasion, she followed fox tracks away from the camp because she believed that there were spirits that disguised themselves as foxes, and if she could find them, she would be treated kindly. Her cooking and sewing became sporadic, and in a response, the men tried coaxing her, then mocked her, then turned to denying her food, forcing her to stay outside in the cold, and even tying her to a flagpole, and at one point they threatened to whip her. As the winter drew in, Ada's mood appeared to lighten as the men's mood began to sag. She threw herself into work, and the 5 men united to survive in the dark, cold months. But she decided to really focus on staying fed and warm and deterring the polar bears that stalked the camp. They looked forward to the summer and the arrival of a relief ship. But even as the summer marched on, peaked, and passed, the icy barrier around the island remained, and the ship that Stephenson had dispatched from Alaska was unable to reach them. So as winter came, they began to weaken, especially Knight, who had fallen ill while he went on a solo exploration that fall, and he began to show signs of scurvy. Finally, in January 1923, with temperatures plummeting to minus 50 degrees. Crawford, Murray, and Galley set across the sea ice towards Siberia, intending to raise alarms and arrange rescue. And they were never seen again. Ada was now left with the deteriorating night. She was now alone and having to provide for them both. She taught herself to catch foxes in traps, shoot birds out of the sky. She even summoned up the courage to scare bears away from the camp. She started providing Knight with fresh meat to combat his scurvy, but as he was declining in health, he was continuously berating her, accusing her of not doing enough to feed them, and all while doing this, she's now showing early signs of scurvy and becoming ill. And then on June 23rd, Knight died. When night passed, Ada recorded the event in Galley's typewriter, writing, "The date of Mr. Knight's death. He died on June 23rd. I don't know what time he died, though. Anyway, I write the date, just to let Mr. Stephenson know what month he died and what date of the month." Having neither the physical strength nor the emotional strength to bury Knight's corpse, she left him resting on his bed inside the sleeping bag and erected a barricade of boxes to protect his body from wild animals. Ada moved into the storage tent to escape the smell of decay. She drove driftwood into the ground to bolster the tattered walls and the ceilings of the tent. She built a cupboard out of boxes, which she placed at the entrance, and there she stored field glass and ammunition. She built a gun rack above her bed so that she could not be caught by surprise if polar bears ventured too close to camp. She hoped and expected that the others would return, but she could not know for sure. So for 3 months, Ada was alone. She learned how to set traps to lure in white foxes. She had taught herself to shoot the birds. She built a platform above her shelter so she could spot polar bears in a distance. She crafted a boat from driftwood. She even experimented with the expedition's photography equipment, taking pictures of herself standing outside the camp. On August 20th, 1923, almost 2 years after first landing on Wrangler Island, Ada woke up in the middle of the night to see the schooner Donaldson on the horizon to rescue. She expected Crawford, Murray, and Galley to be on board, but she soon discovered that they were not. Stephenson and his accomplice Harold Noyce also expected to see all of the men on shore. With the first words they exchanged, they both realized the full gravity of the situation. Ada Blackjack, the seamstress who had been reluctant to go on the expedition, who had been belittled, berated, and tied up, who had to teach herself to hunt, trap, and live in the Arctic, was the last survivor. She was alive, and she was going home to her son. And with that, she collapsed into Noyce's arms and cried. Ada was then reunited with Bennett. She began using her payment, which was less than what she had been promised from her time on the Wrangler Island, to seek treatment for his tuberculosis in a Seattle hospital. She later went on to have a second son, Billy, and they returned to live in Alaska. But despite this seemingly happy ending, Her remaining years were tinged with sadness and poverty. While Stephenson and others profited from the story of the tragic expedition, Ada saw none of the money, and smear campaigns against her character later emerged, claiming that she had refused care for Knight. Bennett's health issues never fully resolved, and he died of a stroke in 1972 at the age of 58. Ada was a quiet person and hated the media circus that developed around her. Except for her expedition salary and a few $100s she had earned from the furs she trapped on Wrangler, Ada did not benefit from the ordeal and received no compensation from the books that were written about her. Ada was in the state retirement facility in Pioneer Home in Palmer, Alaska, when she died there on May 29th, 1983, at the age of 85. She's buried in the Anchorage Memory Park Cemetery, and on her grave, by her son, the words are written, "The heroine of Wrangler Island." And that is the story of the survival story of Ada Blackjack. It is such an amazing story of this woman surviving despite all of these things in the Arctic. It's incredible. And it's so sad she was never able to really receive the compensation she deserved. But I think her story needs to be told. When I heard it, I thought it was amazing. So, I'm gonna go back to like I said in the beginning, I recorded a disappearance case, and I kind of wanted to upload it despite the echo, but I know I shouldn't. I was debating just like recording another half, but I have some cases written out, so I'm gonna get around to that. I also randomly recorded a going around my apartment and just tapping and talking, and I'm debating uploading that, but I'm not sure. So let me know if that would be interesting, or if you're like, whatever. But anyway, I might do some more survival cases just so it's a little bit lighter. But thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you're having a good day or good night wherever you are. Hope you have a good day tomorrow, and I will see you in my next video.